This is KC Sports Tonight.
Neal, can you hear me? Check two. Neal Jones,
Yes.
Can you hear me? There you are. We got him. Hi. You're streaming live, Neal Jones. Talk to the people.
Well, well, what do you want me to say? Scott, I'm shooting a feature at the Turner Boxing Club, which is an old school building. I said, I need someplace, kind of quiet because it's real loud up in the gym, someplace I could do something. And so they put me in like it's like the preschool class. I don't know what that says about me, but they stuck me in here where it at least is quiet.
Well, there's probably some books there. Maybe you should read them. You get a little bit smarter, and that'd be good for all of us.
There's one over here that says why Royals fans hate the Yankees. We'll get into that a little bit later.
We will.
It's
We
aimed at
will.
little kids.
We will get into that. I want to start with the Chiefs. An eventful day 2 of minicamp. I know you weren't out there today, but you probably saw some of the recaps on social media and that sort of thing. Chris Jones, the headliner, who's really not shy about the middle finger on either hand when he addresses the media. But, I think given all the offseason drama with this Chiefs team, it's nice to get back to thinking about some of the important football moves of the offseason. Maybe the first of which was signing Chris Jones to a long-term contract, and now he's back, he's signed, he's healthy, and this is a complete 180 from where we were a year ago when you were grilling him about holding out.
Well, I never grilled him because I am always very sympathetic with players. The players don't have very many cards in that game when they're trying to play poker with the team that owns their rights. There's just not much they can do. And I'm going to be interested to see. You've got some pretty big stars on that offensive line whose contract they're in the same position that Chris Jones was last year. You've got an offensive guard and a center, Trey Smith, and their center, who I can't think of his name, even though he's the greatest center of all time. He played
Creed
at the
Humphrey.
University of Oklahoma. But I'm not in football mode, Scott. It's June.
Yeah.
I'm thinking more about the U.S. Open golf than I'm football. But I'm going to be curious to see how that plays out. Creed Humphrey's personality and Trey Smith's personality a little different than Chris Jones. They're also less accomplished than Chris Jones was. Chris Jones has proven himself. Coming into this last year, he'd proven and he was going for a third contract. The offensive linemen are going for their second contract. And I'm sympathetic. I don't know about you, but I'm sympathetic with the players. NFL careers do not last 25 years. It is not like baseball could be for a pitcher or somebody who can last 15 years. These guys got to make money while they can, while they are healthy, because contracts are not guaranteed. The only thing that's guaranteed is their salary prorated, and then they get to keep the signing bonus. That's it. So, Scott, I never grilled Chris Jones. I'm glad that at the end of the day he was paid, but there is no question that was a fork in the road. If you're going to pay Chris Jones like he's the best defensive interior lineman in football, which I think he is, if you're going to pay him that means you can't pay your all-pro cornerback, L'Jarius Sneed. You got to do a deal to get rid of him because you can't keep him, and they may not be able to keep any of their offensive linemen next year, depending on how they feel. But Creed Humphrey and these guys, if they get hurt this year, they're really in a tough spot. So no, I have nothing but respect for the players when they're in these situations.
Yeah, I have more. Tolerance is a strong word, but for lack of a better word, I have more tolerance for that sort of thing with football for the reasons that you mentioned, because the salaries are not guaranteed, because of the inherent danger in playing the sport relative to other sports, and because of the shorter lifespan. There is still a part of me that has a problem with anybody who's making $25 million a year to hold out for any reason, because my fundamental belief is nobody put a gun to your head when you sign the first contract. And if you sign a contract you should play out that contract, and then you have every right to be a free agent and get another contract. You know, if I'm doing a fantastic job anchoring the 10 o'clock news every night, I don't get to go in after 2 years and say, you know what, I'm going to go sit on my living room couch until you up my salary for year 3. It's just not how it works. I signed a deal, and that's what I will get paid. So I generally have a hard time with athletes who have already made hundreds of millions of dollars. Even if they don't make another dime, they've got more money than God and more money that you and I and everybody else we know will see combined in the rest of our lives. So I've never been all that sympathetic to the holdout case, but I do understand where the NFL is concerned. It's a little bit different because of the inherent wear and tear on the body, the rigors of what they do day in and day out, and the risk that one play in your career could be over.
Let's just have the Oklahoma graduate explain to the Stanford graduate the difference. You've got a millionaire football player who's holding out from a billionaire owner. If he's holding out from a mom and pop store and he's going to bankrupt him, it's one thing. Yeah. The NFL is either the or the second richest league in the world, depending on how you evaluate soccer clubs over in Europe, okay? So the NFL, nobody's going broke in the NFL. Even the bad owners make a lot of money in the NFL. So I don't think Mr. Hunt is going to have one less car or one, and I don't know if he owns a plane. He probably doesn't. His dad certainly didn't. But you know what I'm saying.
I do.
But I can agree. I'll tell you something else. There are two groups of people, really three, if you include coal miners. You've got coal miners, you got football players, and you got people who work for Scott Reiss. All of us, our life expectancy is less than the average mean. So as a result, you have to factor that in, Scott. But seriously, football players' life expectancy is less than regular people.
Right.
And a lot of that has been mitigated, I believe, by changing the rules up a little bit. And teams don't practice on AstroTurf anymore. I think AstroTurf is so hard, it jars your head. I know that when I played and practiced on AstroTurf in football, I felt differently than I did when I played on grass. So I think you have to factor all those things in. Fans aren't very sympathetic. I've read enough history to know that fans have never been sympathetic. I read a thing about a holdout that Joe DiMaggio had. He was the best player in all of baseball, and he was holding out for a moderate raise from the Yankees, and the Yankees wouldn't do it. The Yankees just fed reporters in the New York media, because back then newspapers drove everything. They gave the columnists in New York all these tidbits about, he makes more than everybody but the president. He makes more than this, and he makes more. And the fans turned on DiMaggio like you couldn't believe. If they're going to turn on Joe DiMaggio in New York, I can only imagine what they're going to do in Kansas City with a football player. I mean, it can get pretty ugly, and I know people were mad at Chris Jones, but at the end of the day, when he came in shape, he came in ready to play football, and he made an immediate difference on what was not a great football team early in the year, but his play down the stretch was big. Scott, I know you were at the Super Bowl with me. Remember that third down play on the goal line in overtime when the Niners had the first possession? They drive the length of the field on third down and 7 or 8 and goal from the 7 or 8. It was Chris Jones who beat his man, pushed off a guy who was trying to double team him, and got upfield in the quarterback's face and made the quarterback throw the football away, which changed history, because then the Chiefs could go down and win it with a touchdown rather than having to get a touchdown just to tie the game. Chris Jones, when he plays in big games, he generally comes up big.
No, and I don't think anybody, least of all me, is disputing Chris Jones' value to this franchise, and they don't win a Super Bowl probably either year without 95. So it's not about that. This is, right. It's about, whether a guy who was going to make whatever the number was, 19 million or 21 million, should be, holding out until he gets 25 or 26. That's just a different discussion. And Joe DiMaggio before free agency. So again, players back then, they had way more of a gripe because they were indentured, servants basically to their teams. They couldn't do anything about it for life. And as far as the owners, it's more about salary cap, right? I mean, yes, clearly owners can afford to pay these guys more and more and more, and it comes out of their pockets. And I'm fine with players getting rich at the expense of owners. That's fine. But there's more to it than that because of the salary cap and the intricacies. Right. And, and again, I just feel like, hey, you signed a 4-year deal based on, what you negotiated. I think that you owe it to, everybody to play out that deal and then go be a free agent. But They have leverage, they use it, and it's the way of the world, and I do understand that. Getting back to more mundane discussions of on-field issues, it wasn't just Chris Jones today. We heard from a couple of wide receivers. Marquise Brown on the microphone today, and this is still new for Chiefs fans, getting to hear from Hollywood Brown talking about his arrival in Kansas City, what he can bring to the offense, and he was very straightforward about how much he respects Patrick Mahomes and everything that Mahomes does for his wide receivers and his pass catchers, and just the incredible ability he has to make those around him better. And Brown was also very candid about his own abilities and how he thinks he can make this offense better, which he can. But it really gets you thinking more about the reality of Hollywood Brown in Chiefs red, because it was theory, right, when they signed him, but now all of a sudden you're seeing him out there, you're seeing him at the podium, and so now it's like, okay, this is reality. We've got another really good dude to go out there and be a weapon for Patrick Mahomes.
My big question about him was his foot. He damaged his foot pretty severely in his final college game. It was the Big 12 championship game, I believe, against the University of Texas in Arlington, but it was one of the games in Arlington, and he broke a bone in his foot, fractured a bone in his foot, something. It had to be surgically repaired. He was unable to play in the college football playoff, and when I saw him at the combine that year, he was in a boot. And I asked him, I said, are you going to be, just as he was walking by, I was getting ready to go live, and I said, hey, I'm an Oklahoma grad. I'm a big fan of yours. How are you going to be? And he goes, they're telling me I'm going to be 100%. The NFL doctors have told teams, a number of teams have said, hey, our doctors have told us that this injury you have, you'll come back 100%. But you always wonder, Scott, how critical it is for a wide receiver and people who run, especially, who cut off their feet, and they have to have all that dexterity. If they have a problem, if they have a displaced fracture that has to be repaired through surgery, you never know quite how that's going to come back. But I talked to a scout after the Chiefs got him. I called a guy who's an AFC East scout, so he looks at the AFC East a bunch and knows the AFC very, very well. He said, hey, you don't have to worry about it at all. When he made the move to the Arizona Cardinals, we went to a workout, and because he was kind of working out for people, he was 100%. So he goes, I think the Chiefs are getting a guy who is hungry. He played on great offenses at Oklahoma, and he is ready to be with the winner. He had great success at Oklahoma, won the league every year, I think, at Oklahoma, but he has not had that kind of success. He obviously was some good teams with the Ravens, but it's a different dynamic. Their offensive passing game and what the Chiefs do, completely different, because their quarterbacks and their philosophies are completely different. I think he's going to fit in very, very well, and I think it's interesting that when Patrick Mahomes talked about him in the offseason when they were working out together down in Dallas at Patrick's workouts, Patrick didn't talk about his speed or quickness. He talked about his route running. He goes, this guy's a lot more technical in his route running than I expected. And you know what? If you're a fan of Oklahoma football, you understand that Lincoln Riley had an ability to coach offense, and one of the things he coached were the wide receivers to run the correct routes. And you see CeeDee Lamb and a bunch of the guys who come out of Oklahoma have had successful pro careers because they're more than just fast. They also are smart about reading defenses and running the route properly.
Yeah, I think this is, look, the injury history is well chronicled, and it's obviously very real, but it's also baked into the contract. I mean, that's why you get a guy of this caliber for $7 million, right? So I think that this could be a fantastic signing for the Chiefs. It is a fantastic signing, even if it doesn't work out, even if he gets, he could get hurt in week 2. It doesn't mean it was a bad signing, a bad decision. I think it's great for the team. I think that, people sometimes incorrectly pigeonhole him as just a deep threat guy, and he's so much better than that. He's not a one-trick pony. You talk about the route running. He has pretty good hands, and he can do a lot of different things, and, gets the mind kind of rolling when you think about him in this Andy Reid, Matt Nagy offense, with all the other weapons at their disposal, what he can do. But, of course, first and foremost, it's the need for speed, and he brings that. He's one of the fastest receivers in the NFL. And it's funny because Justin Watson was asked about that today and asked about, the speed factor among the wide receiver core. And he said, it's funny, like before this year, I always put, when they asked who's the fastest dude out there, I always put myself into that conversation. He's like, now I'm not even putting, I can't hold a candle, but that guy and Xavier Worthy, like forget it. Those two guys are an entirely different level of fast. And, it's just it's fun to think of what this offense can be with all that speed at its disposal.
And while it was not the Olympic Games, I think we should point this out. This was not an Olympic race we saw last week at the softball game, but the mustard ketchup relish race for the Chiefs. I showed it to you, and I'm like, Scott, I shot it up, and I go, Scott, I think they ran like 4.8 wearing these Gumby costumes.
Wearing relish costumes, yes.
Yeah. I couldn't believe it. I do think they're going to be faster. Here's the thing that's interesting. Tyreek Hill, I knew all about him, covered him at the Big 12 at Oklahoma State, big fan of Oklahoma State, and watched his success as a kick and punt return man and as a wide receiver. He played a little running back there as well. But when I saw him in person, I'm like, dude, that guy's not little. He's short and strong and stocky. My goodness. Well, okay, Hollywood Brown is not that. He is small, but he is very light. He's very quick. And his quickness, in some ways, was more impressive than his speed because his quickness showed up on the football field. He was a guy that you could throw a drag pattern across the middle, and he would make 5 people miss, just like Tyreek Hill did. The difference is Tyreek Hill could break a tackle or two, even in the NFL. I'm not sure that's Marquise Brown's forte, breaking tackles. His forte is making people miss and making him hard. And I'm telling you what, it's going to be nothing but great for everybody else in the offense if they can keep him and Xavier Worthy healthy. Obviously, Worthy they're holding out just because of a kind of a twinged hamstring. It's not bad enough that he can't be out on the field walking around. They don't want him to run or push off or quick starts. Hopefully, they have both of those guys healthy for a bunch of games this year. You throw in McCole Hartman, who is not. He's not slow. He's not a sprinter speed fast, but he does have some quickness. And I think you've got the makings of what might be a pretty good unit. And you know what? I went back, Scott, and looked at a story that I did last summer at camp. Everybody talking about Sky Moore's growth and how Sky Moore is ready to go. Who knows? Maybe in year 3, Sky Moore is ready to put together some good games and be a little more consistent. Certainly, they were desperate for him to step up last year, and he just was unable to do it. And it'll be interesting. No pressure on him this year at all. He's kind of off in the weeds. Sometimes that's when players play their best, when nothing's expected out of them.
Well, if that's the case, then Kadarius Toney will be an All-Pro this year because I don't think anybody knows what to expect.
Why are you bringing him up? Jared shot about 1 million shots at him yesterday, and I'm like, I don't want Kadarius Toney. Because then I'm the little boy who cried wolf. Yeah, he's going to be good. He's going to be healthy. He's the guy that won the Super Bowl. No, for me, when he plays well, I'll be happy. And if he doesn't play well, I won't be surprised. The coach, it's interesting. Andy Reid really seems to believe in him and like him. And maybe that's just because, look, he's on our roster. We gave up something to get him. Let's just ride it out and see what happens. Or maybe he really believes he's a good guy that deserves a second chance because certainly it would have been very easy to part ways with him the first chance they had this offseason, and they chose not to do that.
He is a former first-round pick with a team-friendly contract. So he remains a Chief for now, and training camp on that front is going to be very, very interesting. Certainly no issue with quantity in the wide receiver room. That's for sure.
Yeah, and if we do a Kadarius Toney television show, I think you would be the perfect person to host it.
I could talk for a while about that. Speaking of guys who have had their own TV shows, or at least probably want to have their own TV shows, I do want to throw this out at you. Just get your take on this whole Aaron Rodgers. I don't want to say fiasco, but I mean, there's 32 NFL quarterbacks, starting NFL quarterbacks. He's the only guy who's not in minicamp, and basically said, I've got another matter that requires my attention. I don't know if he's told the team what that matter is. The public doesn't know what that matter is. But the bottom line is, clearly there is something more important to Aaron Rodgers, who is on the wrong side of 40, who is coming off an Achilles injury and missed the entirety of last season, and who basically holds the entire key to his team's near-term future in his hands, and decides, something else is more important to me than mandatory minicamp. Your thoughts?
He is, I think if you look up Diva in the Encyclopedia Britannica, and I'll bet nobody at home even knows what that is, but if you look him up in the dictionary, that word up, diva, I think he's got to be one of the guys who's a diva. When I think of divas in the NFL, generally I think of wide receivers, but he's a guy that seems to thrive and demand the spotlight. He finds a way, whatever he's doing, he finds a way to get himself in the spotlight, get him in the headlines. He's in a city where all you got to do is cough. If you're a quarterback in the NFL, an NFL quarterback in New York City, particularly for the Jets, all you got to do is cough, and you're going to make headlines on the back pages of those newspapers up there. It's all gossip and crap anyway. But I don't like him. I've talked to people who like him, who've had to deal with him, and they say, no, he's really pretty nice. So he's probably a nice guy. But Scott, from a distance, he's very easy to root against. The NFL has stacked up a bunch of Jets games early in the year in primetime situations because of the Aaron Rodgers factor. And I never wish ill on somebody, but if somebody had to go down with a twisted ankle and be unable to play for about 6 months, I think it'd be pretty funny if it was him again. Getting hurt in a huge buildup, and he got hurt so quickly, it was almost laughable. I felt bad for him, but the more stuff that's happened, I'm kind of like, you know what, maybe it's just karma. Maybe you deserve what you get. We used to have an assistant news director at Channel 5 who grew up in Wisconsin and whose family loved Aaron Rodgers, and she had the biggest crush on him. You know, oh, he's great. And even at the end, even she was like, I am so over him. He was just a prima donna. Forget about it.
Yeah, I mean, I won't make this an Aaron Rodgers bashing session, but I will say I have had some firsthand accounts of interactions with Aaron Rodgers, and it's a lot more bad than good. Now, that said, our own Desmond Moses says, oh, he was a great teammate. He played with him in Green Bay. So maybe he is a great teammate,
yeah.
But, again, reasonable minds will differ. Okay, let's move on to the Royals. Not much to say about getting thumped 10-1 by the Yankees. They've been outscored 14-3 now in the 2 games. And look, they are not the first team, nor will they be the last team to get thumped by this juggernaut Yankee club. I mean, the Yankees are really, really good. They hit the bejeebers out of the baseball. Stanton hit one yesterday that still hasn't landed. I think it was 446 feet or something, straightaway center. But with the Yankees, Neal, come Yankee fans, and that is where you pick up the story.
Well, I was going live yesterday covering the Chiefs, so I went over to the Chiefs, the Arrowhead Stadium. So I'm in the parking lot, and I'm out there like at 3:30, and I'm setting up, and it's empty. But then because it's the Yankees coming to town, and they have I think they have the best record in all of baseball, do they not?
Yep.
So it's a good Yankees team. They come to town, and so people start driving in, and people drive by, and hey, Neal, and they're waving at me, and so then somebody came by and said, the Royals suck, real loud, and I'm standing there. I'm not wearing Royal stuff. I'm wearing a red Channel 5 golf shirt, and so I'm waving at him, And then somebody comes by and goes, who are you with? And I said, I'm with the Kansas City station covering the Chiefs. And he gave me the finger and said, basically, to heck with the Royals, sort of. And I'm like, why would you do that? You haven't even got in. You can't be drunk yet. You haven't even parked yet, And so you know what I did? I went and I got on my phone because I wasn't sure. They have exactly one World Series championship since 2020. The same number as the Kansas City Royals, with a much larger payroll and a much larger fan base and a much larger ego.
Since
since
2020?
Championship.
No, since 20.
Yeah, in 2020.
Oh, in 2020. Okay.
I got it.
Yeah, that's the only one since 2000, right? I mean, it's been forever. Yeah.
Yeah, they have one. They have one, and it's they won it in 2000 and they won in 09, I think, I think that's it.
Okay.
And they just have not. They've been relevant and they've had good players, and certainly they were amongst the teams you thought had a chance to do it, but they haven't gotten it done. And I'm like, unless this guy is my age, because I remember when the Yankees in the 70s and 80s were great. I read about the Yankees when I was growing up, and that's how I started hating them, because I read when I was little, I was a Dodger fan, and I read about all those Yankee teams, and I hated them just from reading that. I mean, sports hatred.
Yep.
And then I'm thinking, unless you're 65 years old, this team hadn't exactly ripped it up. They had a real good run when they had when they had Jeter and those guys and David Cohn. I love David Cohn. He's a great guy, and of course he does so much TV work with the Yankees. A Kansas City guy who ended up with the Yankees. There are individual Yankees that I've really enjoyed meeting, and I kind of root for a little bit. Aaron Judge, I don't know him, but it's kind of fun to watch him play. But the bottom line is their fans are so arrogant. And I don't know that they have that much to be arrogant about, especially towards somebody wearing Chiefs red, standing in front of Arrowhead Stadium doing something on the Chiefs.
It's New York, baby. It's New York. And by the way, Yankees, best record in the American League. They have a winning percentage of .696. The Phillies, .697. So technically the Phillies have the best record in the majors, but obviously neck and neck. A couple of juggernauts. One more quick note on tonight's game, just because it's worth throwing out there. Bullpen game for the Royals, and they're going to start Dan Altavilla, who was just called up prior to Monday's game, and he's a cool story. Hadn't pitched in the majors in 3 years, was a pretty good reliever back in the day with Seattle, but then had 2 shoulder surgeries, incredibly long rehab, long road back. The Royals took a flyer on him, and now here he is, pitched well at AAA. He gets the call, and on Monday came up, and he pitched a perfect inning, 3 up, 3 down, struck out 2 of the 3 batters, and he'll pitch the first inning tonight, so that's kind of cool.
I heard that he, after his second surgery, Tommy John surgery, then he fractured his elbow, that he had to keep his arm like this for I don't know how many months. It was just like to sleep with it like that, had to walk around like that. I don't know if he has kids, but then you're dealing with that, whatever it is. But to go through that, to be able to get back, and then, like you said, he showed pretty good stuff, had pretty good velocity in his comeback inning that he pitched the other night. He's a guy to root for. He really is a neat story, and I'm glad you brought that up because I think it'll be fun to watch that.
Yeah, and you know what? Hopefully he goes 3 up, 3 down again. The Royals get a run or 2 in the first inning, and they can actually have a lead in this series, which has yet to happen. So we'll see. They've been down 2-0 after 1 both games, so hopefully they can get out on a right foot tonight.
Or he could hit the first batter in the head by accident. The benches could clear, and he breaks his arm again. Anything can happen. That's one of the things that's great about baseball. You can't predict it. You just really can't.
Okay, and we'll leave it with our ray of sunshine from Neal Jones out in the field. Thank you very much for that. You and I will do this again tomorrow. You'll be sitting here, and I'll be out at the Rock Chalk Jayhawk Round Ball Classic, so a lot to talk about. Tomorrow's a big day. We got the ring ceremony for the Chiefs, minicamp day 3. So we will have a ton to talk about tomorrow. Until then, drive home safely, go shoot your feature, and I'm going to go do the 6 o'clock news.
You got it. Bye-bye.